Great. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, and welcome to the National Adoption Competency Mental Health Training Initiative Transfer of Learning Tuesdays. Today's webinar is entitled NTI Knowledge and Skill Application, The Real Deal. I am Edna Davis Brown, and I'm an implementation specialist with the NTI project. My co-presenter is the lovely and talented Lisa Maynard. Lisa, give a wave. She's also an NTI specialist, and I appreciate that you are putting in the chat box your name and where you're from. I see a few people that I've worked with directly, and I welcome those that have not joined us previously for an NTI webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next slide. And keep putting your names and where you're from in the chat box. So just a little bit about what we're going to cover today. And we'll talk more about introductions since you're kind of introducing yourselves in the chat box. And of course, Lisa and others will introduce themselves as well. We'll do a brief overview of NTI. We hope that most of you have heard of NTI, and of course, there may be others who haven't, so that's even better than ever. We'll introduce our special presenters from the great state of Texas. They will be providing presentations about the real deal. What we mean is just implementation, how they have been implementing NTI in the state of Texas, why they implemented it. They'll talk a little bit about how they've created a shared language between child welfare and mental health professionals, and just really give us their thoughts about how NTI has enhanced the day-to-day practices of their team and staff members, and provide a little bit of user feedback and lessons learned. We'll also talk to you about how to access NTI and how we provide support around implementation. And I want to encourage you throughout, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box. Lisa and I will be monitoring the chat box, so we'll make sure that your questions are answered. Next slide, Lisa. So, what are our objectives for today? By the end of this session, we hope that you will understand the value of adoption competency and NTI to improve adoption competent practice. You will apply by identifying examples of how NTI training knowledge and skills can be applied in various work settings. You'll demonstrate by understanding and demonstrating the value of collaboration between child welfare and mental health professionals as they promote permanency and well-being. And we will provide you direct information about how to assess the benefit of integrating NTI into an organizational training milieu. And of course, we'll tell you how to access NTI directly in and of itself. So we have a poll, and I'm assuming, Gary, you're going to put up a poll for us. Excellent, excellent. We want to know who's on this webinar with us. So tell us what best describes your current role so we can get a glimpse of who's on this webinar with us. So please respond to what best describes your current role, because I know many of you probably wear multiple hats like most of us. So if we can let us know, Gary, when we're close. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for responding. Quite a 37% of you are child welfare professionals. We have case managers, mental health providers. A great deal of you are also licensed therapists, social workers, a few educators, and others. If you're others, tell us who you are in the chat.
Yeah, so we're emceeing court improvement attorneys, child placing agencies, pediatric clinical mental health, interns, so a wide range of other
Great.
folks that we didn't catch.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Cross-cutting as a certified substance abuse counselor, etc. So again, thank you so much for joining. You're definitely in the right place at the right time. So Lisa?
Thank you, Edna. So hi, everyone. I'm going to tell you a little bit about CASE and NTI. So the Center for Adoption Support and Education was created in 1998 to provide post-adoption counseling and educational services to families in Maryland, Northern Virginia, and Washington, D.C. And we have expanded since then. Since the onset of COVID and the pandemic and isolation, most of us are working remotely. So we've got folks kind of all over the Northeast currently. I'm in upstate New York, and Edna is in Silver Spring, Maryland, and our base is in Burtonsville, Maryland. CASE is a private, nonprofit adoption services agency, envisioning that everyone touched by foster care and adoption have the access to adoption-competent mental health services to navigate their lifelong journey through adoption. The National Adoption Competency Mental Health Training Initiative, or NTI, was built on the firm foundation of expertise that CASE has and drawing from lots of professionals that we've worked with and experts around the country to develop NTI. NTI was a 5-year research initiative funded by the Children's Bureau, and it was funded to create a state-of-the-art, web-based, self-paced training for child welfare and mental health professionals. We strive to enhance the capacity of professionals to understand and address the mental health needs of children and families in foster, adoptive, or guardianship families. NTI provides the skills, strategies, and tools for child welfare and mental health professionals to better support children to heal from loss and grief and trauma, provide parents with skills to parent more effectively. Our kids who come into foster care and adoption, guardianship, have unique needs, unique challenges, and we want to make sure that folks are prepared to address those well, and to improve child and family well-being, to increase family stability. Really what we want to do is, as our sort of tagline says, advance practice for permanency and well-being. So for most children, adoption is a significant protective factor, right? We want children to, if they are removed from birth family and if parental rights are terminated, we don't want them languishing in foster care forever and a day. Adoption is a way to give children stability. Through NTI's web-based trainings, CASE supports a common core of mental health and adoption learning that will enhance the ability of child welfare and mental health professionals to speak a shared language, to collaborate to better serve children and families. NTI gives mental health and child welfare professionals the skills, tools, and knowledge to provide competent mental health services to children, youth, and families. We've worked to support this collaboration between child welfare and mental health to improve permanency outcomes and the health and well-being of adoptive and guardianship families. And I think our guest presenters are going to talk about how they've seen that working through the training, through their implementation of the training. A comprehensive list of our core competencies, our learning objectives, and so on is available on our website. And we'll be putting that up throughout the presentation. The American Academy of Pediatrics identifies mental and behavioral health as the greatest unmet needs of children and teens in foster care. So why is competency important? I think we can see that, again, these children have unique issues. They have lots of trauma that they've come into care with, and their families are going to need some special skills to deal with them. There are 2 separate but well-aligned trainings. We have the child welfare curriculum, which is about 20 hours, 8 modules with 5 additional hours of supervisor-specific lessons in our supervisor coaching and activity guide. The child welfare curriculum is approved for 20 hours of Category 2 CEUs for the child welfare staff and 25 hours for supervisors. The mental health curriculum, as I said, is very well aligned to the child welfare. It includes 2 additional modules that focus on assessment and treatment strategies and effective parenting techniques for adoptive and foster families. The mental health curriculum is about 30 hours in length and has CEUs, 25 hours of Category 2 CEUs. And again, this training is free, web-based, self-paced, and free. And we like to say free over and over again because we tend to get asked that question like, what's the catch? How much is it really? And it's like really, really free. And our presenters, guest presenters will tell you that too, I'm sure.
Great, thank you, Lisa. The curricula are not identical, however, they are aligned and complementary. Here you'll see a listing of the key competencies across or contained within the training. The last 2, assessment and treatment planning and therapeutic parenting strategies, are primarily housed or focused on within the mental health training. And some of the models that we talk about in NTI include the 3-5-7 model, attachment biobehavioral catch-up or AC, attachment regulation and competency, ARC, just to name a few. They are touched upon in the training. They are not necessarily trainings within the module, rather a mention of treatment models that have been found to be useful within this population. So this is really a great toolbox for you in terms of key competencies, key areas that both mental health and child welfare providers would need and as they work with these families and these populations. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and transition to our wonderful speakers that we've had the opportunity to work with. I guess it's been over a year now, so if we can shift to our next slide, Lisa. We are glad and happy that Sarah, Megan, and Brenda will be sharing information about their implementation and their experiences rolling out NTI. Sarah Sullivan is an adoption program specialist with the Texas Child Protective Services State Office. Tamara Harris is a foster adoptive home development program team lead, also with the Texas Child Protective Services Office. And we have Megan Ramson. She is the Director of Community Engagement with the Texas Alliance of Child and Family Services. And last but not least, of course, is Brenda Keller, Director of Clinical Practice Initiatives, also with the Texas Alliance of Child and Family Services. So without any further ado, we look forward to hearing from our special presenters. And remember, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. So, Sarah.
Hi, thank you, Edna. Thank you, Lisa. Like Edna said, my name is Sarah Sullivan. I'm the Adoption Program Specialist with Child Protective Services in Texas. You can go to the next slide. So Child Protective Services, CPS, falls under the umbrella of the Department of Family and Protective Services in Texas. And our mission is to promote safe and healthy families and protect children and vulnerable adults from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. In Texas, the Department of Family and Protective Services makes up 11 regions. We're a big state, so we're broken up into 11 regions, 12 counting our state office, which is where I am housed. And within those regions, 4 of the areas are in what we call community-based care. And so those areas were encouraged to participate in our NTI training, but because they're community-based care providers, they're able to set up their own training initiatives and move forward in that way. And so those areas are 1, 2, Bexar County in Region 8 and part of Region 3. You can go to the next slide. So for the purposes of NTI, we really wanted to focus on the areas that work with our families who are pursuing adoption and our children who are being adopted. And so we made the decision to require the NTI training for our adoption staff. And so that is our adoption preparation caseworkers. And so those are our caseworkers who are on the ground every day working with our children and families, evaluating trauma, grief, loss, a lot of those competencies that Edna just covered, and recruiting families for adoption and just preparing our children for that. And we also required it for our foster and adopt home development staff. And so that is CPS as a child placing agency. CPS is a CPA. And so we have our own foster homes and a foster and adopt development program. And so we wanted to have those caseworkers who are working directly with our families who will be adopting our children so that they're all using the same tools and learning the same methods for working with those kids. Go to the next. Why NTI? I think Edna and Lisa already did a great job explaining why NTI. It is an amazing training. We love that it was evidence-based. Like they said, it's free, which was great because we were able to offer it to all of our staff. As you saw, Texas is a big state, so we have a lot of staff. So having a training that's free and accessible to everyone is something that we really loved. And the fact that it is evidence-based and trauma-informed. We have a training model that all of our staff go through when they begin working for CPS, but it didn't have something really specific to adoptions. That was that strong evidence-based model that we wanted. And when we found NTI, we fell in love. So like I said, we're requiring the training for our adoption staff. And so that's going to be about 500 adoption staff, including caseworkers and supervisors. And then for our foster and adopt home development staff, which was roughly 190 workers, including caseworkers and their supervisors. We recommend the training to anyone interested, but we're definitely recommending it for our program directors, any support staff that we have, and those community-based care providers that I discussed in an earlier slide. So when we started out our NTI journey, we piloted the program in 3 adoption units in 2 of the regions in 2020. And based on the feedback that we got from those pilot areas, we created our implementation plan moving forward. And so our implementation plan was that it would begin in January 2021, which it did. And we are expected to be finished with all of our current tenured staff. They will have completed the training by August 31st, 2021. Our expectation was that staff would complete 1 module per month, and then each region would report completion of those modules to state office. And that was based off of recommendations from the pilot that a lot more structure and a lot more internal accountability would be really helpful. So that check-in once a month with finding out if the module was completed, any concerns with completing the module, technical difficulties or otherwise, would be reported back to us so that we can kind of help troubleshoot some of that. And then for our new staff, they will complete the NTI program in the first 9 months after their case assignable. So they'll go through our already established training program for staff joining Child Protective Services. And then in those 9 months, once they're working their cases and working directly with children and families, they'll also be completing the NTI training. Where are we now? I'm very excited to say that we have about 800 conservatorship and adoption staff who are currently taking NTI. In some of our regions, we don't have specific adoption staff and adoption units. So some caseworkers will start a case at the very beginning and work it all the way through to adoption. And so we have some conservatorship caseworkers taking it. We also have some areas that just want all of their staff taking it. So they've asked all of their conservatorship staff to take the NTI training because they can see how valuable it is for everyone working in the adoption continuum. So across the state, I wrote that we're beginning the 4th module, but we should be completing it in the next week or so, and then moving on to the 5th one. And then that tracking and reporting will be sent back to us so that we can have those check-ins at the beginning of May. And like I said, the reason we did that was based on the feedback that we got from the pilot area, was that 1 module a month was something that was feasible and accessible to our staff just based on other job duties and requirements so that they could really dedicate time and energy to focusing on NTI. So here's some more of the feedback. This person said, I like the section about how the child and family feel during the adoption process and bonding with caregivers. Putting ourselves in their place really puts things into perspective. Acknowledging their concerns, fears, hesitation reminded me that it's not easy for a child or adoptive family. In case practice, I've been using this tool more so they feel validated and heard. In some cases, we have taken the process slower to allow the child to adapt to a new caregiver while staying in their current home. So we can see that our caseworkers are already applying the knowledge that they're gaining from NTI in their case practice on a day-to-day basis. Some more feedback, like the info, it'll help me do my job better. Very educational regarding different types of biases we might encounter. After completing the training, I didn't feel that I would encounter such things because I believed it could be easy to control our own biases. However, looking back, I was very surprised to find we definitely encounter bias when working with families. Some more feedback that we've gotten is that from some of our newer caseworkers who have started the training is that they have seen the topics that were covered in the NTI training play out in real life. And so having that foundation with NTI has been really helpful. So while they were learning it, they were thinking, no way. And then they saw it in the field practice and were able to apply a lot of the skills that they learned. And I see this question pop up. So conservatorship in Texas is when a child comes into CPS care. So the state of Texas has custody over that child, temporary custody, and it's working to reunite that child with their family. And so some caseworkers work from that stage and then through adoption, if adoption is the permanency plan for that child ultimately. I hope that answered your question. So some of the feedback and some of the things that we put in place, again, based off of the pilot areas, was that we provided a tip sheet to the regions. And the tip sheet had tips on functionality of NTI. NTI is a very intuitive and immersive training. You really have to pay attention. You really have to go through each module and each video and each activity to absorb the information, but also to be able to move on and get credit for those modules. And so we just provided some tips about how to do that. If you do encounter any issues, what to do. And then we provided some transfer of learning tips. And we provided those to our caseworkers and our supervisors so that our supervisors could really implement a lot of those skills when they're working directly with their caseworkers in supervision. We also collected all of the handouts and the resources because NTI is full of amazing handouts and amazing resources. So we collected them all and put them in a central location so that our staff could easily access those handouts and resources while they were going through the training. We also requested that our supervisors, something that we saw that they were doing really well in the pilot was that they were utilizing some of those tips that they were learning from NTI in their monthly unit meetings, during their conferences to go over case information. And then they were also having work sessions. So they were having their unit come together and complete a training together. They were all doing it individually, but doing it together for encouragement, camaraderie, and then to make sure that everyone was completing the training timely. So we have collaborated with the wonderful Texas Alliance of Child and Family Services, who's here, Brenda and Megan, to pilot and implement NTI. And so their areas mirrored ours so that we were all speaking the same language, conveying the same information, and making sure that as many wonderful families and caseworkers and staff could get this training as possible. We have shared and encouraged the participation in NTI with our partners with the Health and Human Services Commission, including the Children's Mental Health Division and the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. And within the Department of Family and Protective Services, we've shared it with our Child Protective Services and Child Protective Investigations mental health specialist at our state office, and encourage them to take the training and then share it with the regions, those 11 regions, and the mental health specialists in those regions. We've also gotten great feedback again from the regions that they are sharing the training and really championing and encouraging people to take it outside of CPS, so including our court-appointed special advocates and our other mental health providers. So they are really taking on a lot of the brunt of encouraging outside providers to take this training. Next. So the biggest lesson that we learned was that collaboration and buy-in with NTI is the key to success. Outside of Texas, we were able to meet with a few other states who have already completed implementing NTI to learn from them and get a lot of ideas from them. And a lot of the things we got from our pilot area and a lot of the implementation tools we got from those other states. So they were incredibly helpful, and we were able to connect with them through our wonderful partners at NTI. We also learned that revisiting the modules and discussing the content as a unit, it really assists in the transfer of learning. Everybody has a different learning style, so some people can do the modules and really absorb it, but other people really benefit from that. So we've seen that be really effective. And for us, the slow and steady model of one module a month has been really successful. We've seen completion of the modules as they're expected to be really high, and our staff do seem to be responding really well to the pace that we have set. Thanks.
Sarah, there was a question from one of our participants who wanted to know if you created specific tip sheets or you used the ones that NTI has.
Both. So any handouts and resources that NTI has provided us, we are sharing them with our staff because they are so helpful, and they have really all the information that you would want. I also created a tip sheet just solely based off the pilot and kind of the feedback that they gave. And a lot of it is functionality like allow each slide to play in its entirety. So things like that. So we did both.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions? If
And
you
Lisa,
put modules together, how does each person obtain credit?
Sure. So they are completing the modules on their own devices, but they're just together, as in physically together, to complete the module. Because working together sometimes is great, even though you have to do have to complete it on your own device to obtain credit.
Did you find, Sarah, that people, as they're doing that, are they talking with each other? We've actually had a couple of different sites where everybody's in the same room, and did that support that transfer of learning, do you think?
I think it definitely supports it because you're able to talk through the information as you're receiving it. And especially because we all have different learning styles, I benefit from that. So that's something that a lot of people do benefit from, being able to go through a few slides and then kind of talk through it all and then move on to the next two. I think it's really helpful. Great.
And then one more question. How are you tracking in between monthly check-ins?
Sure. So the regions and the units are able to kind of determine their best way of operating for each month while completing it. So some people do require an earlier completion date, and then they all meet together as a unit to discuss it. Or some people do work together as a unit. For the tracking purposes, we just created a tracker, and they send it to us if the modules were completed or not. So it was just something we created.
Great, thank you. Okay. All righty. Anything else? Should we move on to the next?
yeah, Lisa, I forgot to ask this, but maybe you can put this in your chat box. How many of you are currently integrating NTI in your state? I saw a couple of my folks from Mississippi and I think Kentucky. There are lots of states represented here. Maybe in your chat box, just indicate that you're integrating or implementing NTI in your state, or you have taken NTI, or you are completing NTI currently. So please share that in the chat box so we can know where you are with NTI.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll move on to Megan and Brenda. Take it away, ladies.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and great job, Sarah. I think she said about everything we needed to say, so we can be done here, right? No, we're excited to be here, and we've really, really enjoyed our partnership with both NTI and as a network association and organization. You can move to the next slide, sorry. Okay. The Texas Alliance of Child and Family Service, we partner a lot with DFPS here in Texas, and our partnership with them and working together is very important to us. So we were really excited to have the opportunity to kind of mirror this pilot along with them. But as an organization, we have over 150 community organizations that are serving children and families on the full continuum of care, providing services in the child welfare system. And we provide everything from education to training, to collaboration and advocacy at the Capitol and with state leaders. And I'm going to turn it over to Brenda to introduce the other arm of our organization.
So the Texas Center for Child and Family Studies, or the Center, is the 501c3 nonprofit arm of the Alliance. So while the projects that come out of the Alliance typically center on advocacy, the Center tends to focus on projects that involve research and education. So the Center strives to stay on the forefront of innovation and best practices in child welfare through training, consulting, and research. The Center offers training and consulting to child and family serving agencies across the state of Texas to help them stay on top of emerging child welfare issues, continuous quality improvement of the services that they provide, program evaluation, and program and evidence-based intervention implementation support. We frequently collaborate on projects and grants with organizations across Texas, including One Star and Rebuild Texas, the Texas Children's Commission, Texas DFPS and CPS, of course, Case Family Programs, the Office of the Governor, Sex Trafficking Team, and the University of Texas School of Social Work, just to name a few. Next slide. So why NTI? So we are always looking for innovative, emerging training opportunities for our members. A lot of our members are from small agencies, small community agencies. Texas is a really big state, so very diverse rural agencies that are trying their best to serve the children and families. And so we really try to look out for them to try to find good emerging training opportunities for our members. And our members also let us know when they are seeking something or they're really in need of something specific. So for some time, our members have been letting us know that they desperately need and we're struggling to find high quality, up-to-date, trauma-informed and engaging adoption competency training for their staff and for their partners. And Megan and I agreed. We'd had multiple conversations about this as well, how we really felt like this was a place that was just kind of missed, that a lot of people, there wasn't a lot out there. There weren't a lot of organizations creating up-to-date trauma-informed training specifically for adoption. So Texas is a big state, lots of diversity, lots of diverse needs, but this was a consistent message that we were receiving from our organizations. So this is when we found out about NTI. We were really excited to find out about it. And then we heard that DFPS was also looking into it. And so it just felt like the timing was perfect. Megan and I never want to tell our members to try something that we haven't tried. So she and I both took the course. She took the child welfare track and I took the mental health track, and we both immediately loved it. We thought it was the best adoption training we've ever taken, the best adoption training we've seen in a very long time. It felt so relevant and so comprehensive. So we were extremely excited to bring it to our members. Next slide.
And so that's when we kind of started thinking through our pilot. And so our child placing agencies are the community organizations, the private adoption agencies that work throughout the state of Texas. And we decided we mirrored the same regions for our pilot, regions 7 and 11. And we had quite a few people. I'll show you on the next slide the variety of folks we had from the child placing agencies. But how we set it up was we offered a 12-week pilot. We were there to answer any questions. We were providing resources and support along the way, but we also hosted check-ins with the group. So we had a halfway check-in and maybe it was a little kind of, a nudge to be like, maybe you should be halfway at this because it is a big time commitment. And I think once you get into it, you realize that, and it's all worth it. And then we did have a kind of a wrap up at the end where we checked in with the group to get feedback. And we were also really excited because we had just opened our own learning management system and launched that, the Texas Alliance Online Learning Center. So we were able to work with NTI to get the training on our learning management system. And so I think that was also a learning experience for us because the system was new to us and getting that on. So it was just a great experience all around. And this just gives you all a little look at the group for our pilot participation. We had 53 participants from 7 different CPAs. And that also includes, we did have a child placing agency refer one of their contract therapists that took part in the master level clinicians training. And I will say his input was invaluable to us. So we were really excited to have him be part of our pilot group.
All right. So like Megan said, we have the training, all 3 options, the child welfare track, the mental health track, and the added supervisor lessons on our own learning management system. We were starting up and getting to know our own learning management system at that time. So NTI made it very easy. If you're worried about if it's compatible, they made it very easy. They have the process down. So it was really easy for us to get it on our LMS pretty quickly. Our pilot sites helped us kind of get out some of the kinks and figure out exactly how we wanted it to look and some behind the scenes stuff. So now we have all of that worked out. And I just went yesterday on our LMS and like looked at all tracks and like randomly went into different trainings, and it's all working really great. So now we feel prepared to offer it to all of our members across the state of Texas, as well as any child and family serving organizations across the state of Texas. We also really hope to get this training in the hands of mental health professionals who work with children and families in the child welfare system and with adopted families. I did family therapy for years with families that were affected by adoption, and I feel like I learned so much from taking this training. So I really feel like mental health providers would absolutely benefit from having this information, especially if you're a mental health provider who doesn't have lived experience. So we are going to try to target specific mental health networks across the state of Texas. We also host a conference every year. We usually have over 1,000 people, and we plan to have the NTI team, if they will have us, come and do a session at our conference so that we can continue to spread the word of this training across Texas. Next slide.
We'll be there.
Yay, we're excited. Hopefully in person, yay.
Hopefully in person.
Fingers crossed. Okay, so our pilot users told us so many great things. I have to say, this is not me just being nice. This is probably the most positive feedback I've ever gotten from any training that I've been a part of. Like everyone who took it loved it. These were some of the things that they said. It was a user-friendly layout. The content was presented in a variety of ways to fit all different learning styles. Loved the numerous video and movie clips from experts, as well as from families and children and adults with lived experience. The information was extremely comprehensive, but also easy to understand. Loved the variety of relevant topics covered, including the trauma-informed approach, including concepts from trust-based relational intervention. Loved that attachment theory was included, Dr. Bruce Perry's NMT model, the effects of complex childhood trauma on the brain. They were also excited about all of the adoption and child placing agencies and the DFPS adoption workers having kind of that shared language and kind of being on the same page. And we also got a comment that the content provided renewed inspiration for doing this difficult work. And when I took the mental health track, these were just, I thought I would share some of my thoughts from the mental health track. I thought, like they said, extremely thorough and comprehensive. It covers every type of adoption and permanency. It felt like taking a semester-long class. So I get what Sarah said about spreading it out, a little bit, because it really was so thorough and comprehensive. I personally really like that it takes strong stances. For example, secrecy is harmful in adoption. All parties to adoption benefit from being open and honest and sharing information. It really takes some strong stances in these areas, and I really appreciate that about it. It highlighted the 7 core clinical issues faced in adoption and their direct link to mental health, which that was the part I found so helpful as a mental health practitioner. And all the detail about how to do a truly thorough, comprehensive adoption assessment. And again, the videos that are very personable and tell stories, it really does help you kind of get a deeper perspective. And yeah, really great. Next slide.
So some of our lessons learned, and I think Brenda had already stated this, but this was a neglected area of training. I think all of our child placing agencies that have been part of the pilot or since started the training have really just shared with us how needed this was for their staff and for their agencies. And they've been really excited to take it. The importance of incorporating a trauma-informed approach. We are, moving here in Texas, TBRI is our go-to and our trauma-informed approach. And I think that this did a really great job of kind of being up to date and informative. Highlighted the need for an updated caregiver training as well. Some of the feedback we were receiving immediately and continue to sense is, how can we use this for our families? How can we use this for foster parents, for the caregivers, kinship? And I think somebody had a question about that. And while, we haven't recommended using this for anyone outside of mental health professionals or child welfare professionals, I think it can really help better prepare these professionals to train the caregivers that they're licensing and working with in the child placing agencies. And, as a state, we've also kind of started looking into, our organization, some ideas for updated caregiver training. We also learn, just preparing folks for the time commitment and the attention and the focus required for it, just having them be mindful as they move into taking this training, how they're preparing for it. I love what Sarah and the DFPS team is doing by allowing those check-ins and allowing folks to kind of take it slow to make sure they're not only getting it done, but they're thinking it through and processing everything. And developing a plan for accessing continued training resources. We also learned that kind of as we were going to, folks wanted those videos and they wanted those handouts and resources. And just what we ended up doing was creating a SharePoint folder that everyone could access. And once they've finished the training, that also allowing them to have access to that after.
And Megan, there is a compatible, one of the questions was training, like Megan said, for the actual families. Yes, I think it was the NTI team who also turned us on, or someone turned us on to a very compatible, similar training specifically for families. And we are looking into it. I forget what it's called though.
The NTDC.
NTDC. There you go. Yeah, and it looks great. Again, we're on the beginning stages of looking into that. But I did go on their website and I did take some of their, they have a couple sample trainings that you can take, and they felt very similar to this training, but specifically geared toward families. So we thought we would close out by asking you guys a question. What is the most critical topic not currently covered in the adoption training curriculum that you're currently using? If not, it seems like a lot of you are using NTI, but for those of you who aren't, what are some of the topics that come to mind that you feel maybe isn't covered?
And folks, if you put your answer in the chat box, if you would make sure it goes to all panelists and not just to, make sure it goes to all panelists, okay?
Yeah, the NTDC, you're right. What we found out was it was originally designed to be in person, but some states have adapted it. I'm pretty sure Florida has adapted it to be completely virtual. So there are people out there adapting it to the virtual environment. And a couple of different people told us that in the future, they plan on doing kind of a hybrid model. So I think you have options with that one as far as doing it in person or as a hybrid, or Florida is doing 100%, or at least some counties in Florida, I know they're a county system, are doing 100% virtual.
Yeah. There was a question about, in terms of the training, the question was around professionals who are trained to prepare parents. So with respect to NTI possibly being a good training for those individuals, yes.
Oh yeah.
In terms of that response, absolutely. And there's so many activities, resources, tools that as professionals you can use with families. So NTI is jam-packed with all those kinds of things as well. I want to reiterate again. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Someone was speaking.
That was me, that's Lisa. So I also saw the question about the ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, and we do talk about diversity, race and diversity. And Terry Cross, who's one of the founders of ICWA, was on our advisory committee and did not only some of the writing, but a lot of the review of the curriculum. So, you know, we feel like we did a pretty decent job in covering ICWA as well. It's not an ICWA training, but you know, we did have Terry as an integral part of our team.
And there is a lot of talk about, you know, multiracial and ethnic adoptions. It goes into that a lot. Mm-hmm.
There was a question, if a staff completes the modules and is then promoted, is there a way for them to watch just the supervisor's modules without having to watch all of the videos again? If the
yeah, I actually
videos
don't think so, because it's a separate training, right? I mean, it's the same training with 5 additional hours, but in order to access those 5 additional hours, you'd need to go into the supervisor training. I don't know. So my thought is, and maybe I think Dawn is on here, maybe she could give us a little guidance here, but I think you could watch the supervisor sections if you don't need the extra credits. Let's see what she's
Lisa, hey, this is Dawn Wilson.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Dawn, yep, go ahead, Dawn.
Well, I was just going to say that systems that are integrating NTI training on their own learning management system probably could set it up so that people who've participated in the child welfare professionals training, who then get promoted to as supervisors, they probably could make it possible for them to just watch the supervisor lessons, because they would have those lessons separately, you know, on their system. Folks who are using, for instance, our learning management system or accessing on CapLearn would probably not have that option, because they're set up as 3 separate trainings: the child welfare professionals, child welfare supervisors, and mental health professionals. Does that make sense? That because the folks who integrate it into their system actually have the training files, they could probably find a way to just create the supervisor lessons. And then they would be responsible for making sure that folks actually had the rest of the content previously. So.
Great. Okay, I see one of our participants, Megan, says that's how we did it. So.
And I just from a practice perspective, a lot of our staff were saying that having the training or some of the training as like a refresher after completing the whole thing would be really helpful, because it is comprehensive and can be hard to digest. So I would argue doing the training again is really helpful, especially if you're transitioning roles, because then you're gaining more knowledge.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So, there was a question out about what learning management system you use, and there were a couple of responses like Moodle, and there's so many of them, and what did you guys use?
Ours is called
Megan.
Thinkific. It's called, the one that we use is called Thinkific.
Can you type that in the chat box, Brenda, for everybody?
Yeah, please.
Thank you.
And we actually
Maybe
just use we use the University of Maryland and the Children's Bureau's LMS. So that's how we're accessing the.
Yes. And we'll talk about Access in a minute, so you guys will have that information about how to access it through various other ways as well. Because many of our states, while many of our states did use their own learning management system, some of the states use Access through the Case LMS and also through the Children's Bureau LMS as well. And we'll share that in a minute. Okay.
So
I think we have. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yep. I was going to say, in answer to the question about what's not currently covered in your training, the training that folks are already using, information about ICWA, MIPA, IEPA, you know, things that it sounds like some policy issues. I saw something else. Managing stress responses is not included in things that you're currently using. And so we, you know, I think Brenda and Sarah both said this, we have a lot of tools that are embedded into the training. Again, and as Edna said, you know, things like TBRI and TFCBT, we don't do the training on those models, but lots and lots of resources that talk about lots of ways to deal with behaviors, with loss and grief, healing, how to talk to children. It's just jam-packed with resources. So let's see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we may have covered everything, and keep putting your questions in the chat box. We will have another, before we close out, we'll make sure we cover your questions.
Yeah.
And I want to thank the Texas folks. Oh my goodness, we should have you on a commercial for NTI. Thank you so much for your presentations, and certainly we enjoy working with you as we do with all our states. I wanted to share this particular resource on our website, and if you go to our website, you'll see that it's so packed with resources and materials to support implementation and transfer of learning, but I want to draw your attention to the National Directory of NTI Trained Professionals. This is, and it's actually populated with many professionals who have actually completed the NTI training. So we've gotten, periodically we even get requests from folks in my state of Michigan or wherever, are there any licensed therapists that have completed NTI? And we're able to actually go through this directory and share that information with folks. So we encourage professionals who, mental health professionals or licensed professionals who have completed the training to actually enter information into this directory along with their certificate of completion, because we have to authenticate it to include them in this national directory, this directory of trained professionals. So we want to definitely draw your attention to this as well. So Lisa, do you want to talk about Access?
Sure do. And let me just say that we have been getting calls and emails from folks around the country who have been asking us, do you know anybody who has completed NTI in the state of Oregon or the state of Wisconsin, or, you know, you name the state. We have been getting a lot of inquiries, And the first thing I do is check our directory and see if we've got anyone who's signed in. So this is turning out to be a real useful tool all across the United States. And for anybody who's on the webinar who is a mental health professional, if you haven't taken NTI, we are so eager to add to our directory and would really love to see you as a part of it. So if our cheerleaders have done the job that we think that they did, Brenda, Sarah, and Megan, oh my gosh, yeah, I agree. We need to do a commercial with you guys. But I just think that it really speaks to the efficacy of NTI, the how user-friendly it is, how free it is, and comprehensive, all of those things. So if you are interested, we have lots of tools for getting you on. If you go to our website, adoptionsupport.org/NTI, and come to access options for training, this page will come up. And you can access it has how to access as an individual. It has how to access if you're an agency, organization that wants to upload the files again to your own learning management system. Again, it's free either way. Either you log on and take it through our learning management system or through the Children's Bureau, or you upload the files into your learning management system. All the files are free. And we have a great support team, Gary, whose lovely voice you heard at the beginning of our webinar. He's a great support, and his colleague, Brittany, they're really terrific. And if you have any difficulties in uploading the files, they are super expert in helping you do that. So you can access again on the Case LMS. You can access it on Kaplearn. On our LMS, on the Case LMS, the CEUs are free and you get a help desk. This is all free and accessible based on our funding. And currently our funding is through the end of September with an extension pending. And then on the Kaplearn website, again, it's free, but the CEUs have to be purchased. And the CEUs are purchased through our C.A.S.E seminars. And I believe they're $40 for the whole 20, 25, or 30 CEUs. So even if you do have to spend a few bucks, for anybody who's taken online learning for CEUs, you know they're usually in the $200 range. So that's a real bargain and a real benefit for sure. Accessing and enrolling in the NTI is super easy. Basically, you fill out a form that's demographics, you choose your location, you choose your agency, and you click and you go. It's really, really, really simple. And if you're having any difficulty whatsoever, as I said, you can contact Gary or the help desk. You could also contact Edna or myself, and we're happy to assist you in getting started. So our folks in Texas have, I think maybe Brenda, you mentioned this, this conference. Somebody want to say a little bit about this? Sarah, Brenda, Megan, Edna?
I'll say something then. Lisa and I will be presenting a little bit about NTI at an event sponsored by a nonprofit in Texas, Chosen, and the Texas Alliance. It's going to be May 26th from 10 until 11. And this is in celebration of Trauma Informed Month. So we'll be talking a little bit about how NTI is trauma informed and how that is weaved into our this particular training. So if you want to join us again, it'll be May 26th, but it is strictly, if I'm not mistaken, Megan, it is for folks in the state of Texas, or you're opening it up to everyone? Can you clarify?
I'd say anyone is welcome. Yep.
Okay. Everybody is welcome to to join us again, whether you're in the state of Texas or Georgia or wherever. So, and I believe we'll make sure that you get the invitation through our constant contact or your designated implementation specialist. So we look forward to it on May 26th. Are there any additional questions that we haven't responded to, or comments? Or any of you who have heard the presentation now feel like, oh, I'm going to take NTI now that I've heard this presentation. So feel free to share those in the chat box, or if you have any additional questions before we close out. We want to thank our presenters. Thank you, Lisa, my partner in crime. We do so many presentations together. Thank you, Dawn, for joining us. And most of all, Gary, we so appreciate and the University of Maryland team. Without any further ado, this is our contact information. You'll be getting the slides. Feel free to, thank you, Deborah, she's going to take NTI. So thank you so much for your time today. And this session is also recorded. We'll have it on our website and links will be sent to you as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And until next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.